with our admin, Mr. CS, who was on the show talking about his top 500 experience on PlayStation. So we're working with him on trying to figure out a little bit of a solution to that, trying to get you guys on Xbox and PlayStation the same game night, and yet maybe separate game nights. So we're kind of working out some of the logistics for that, getting you guys something. But we need some more personnel to get that done, and obviously I will not be able to do that. I think in the future, Andres would like to be a little bit more extensive to helping out that console community, but I lack the budget and the ability to, in my current situation, to play another console in addition to PC. But that's why we do the show, because we do the show in a sense that console and PC are both beneficiaries of the content of the show. So without further ado,
we're looking out for you guys too. But yeah, like Rob said, it's just a little harder to organize the console community because it's a little split and it's not as easy to gather as many people. And you have to have the console and the game, the console. So we're working on it.
Absolutely. So without further ado, let's talk about our Patreon and our amazing, I just sound like a redneck, amazing people over on patreon.com/Omnic Lab supporting the show at the top level. We have Mr. RC Crispy, our admin himself, Chris, supporting us over there. He said to plug his Twitter and his Twitch for him. So if you guys want to see actually highlights from the game content, he has tons of clips on his twitch.tv/RCCrispy. And we would promote this even if he wasn't an admin or a sponsor, because there are some great clips in there of Andres getting kills and also getting killed and
really funny stuff,
the smack talk that ensues. So it's really good stuff. And you can find him over at twitter.com/crispyrcer. We also have Mr. Magic, who is a bit like Magic on Twitter. You can check out both of those guys over there. And then we have two new patrons this week. We have Mr. Jordan W. and Matt M. And thanks you guys for being a part of the Scientist Squad. We appreciate you guys on the support. If you guys are sitting at the platinum level, which I believe is the $2.50 price point on the donations per episode, you guys can have a VOD submitted to Andres, and we have a link in the show notes for you on how to do that. This is a VOD review, kind of like a mini coaching session on one of your recordings that you guys can have. So please send those in if you want some help. So let's jump into some news, shall we? We got some cool stuff that we barely missed on the last show because it came out hours after we had uploaded our recording. So actually hours after our live show. Excuse me on that. So Andres, what happened with the Christmas event, man? This sounds exciting.
The Christmas event. Well, okay, I'm going to be really honest over here. I have not played the Christmas event as much as I played, like, Junkenstein's Revenge. I don't know why. It just seems like the May Snowball event is so slow sometimes. And, like, there is so much waiting since, you have one bullet. Then if you miss the bullet, you have to slowly go search for another one. And then the likelihood of you getting killed while searching for another snowball is pretty high. And then if you get killed, you kind of just sit there and, wait for a long time until your team is done. And then you do 3 rounds of this. And I played it a couple of times. It was fun for the first couple of times, but I definitely haven't had the motivation like I did on Junkenstein's Revenge to do all of the achievements and try to get the stuff. This one has been more of a, okay, that was fun. Now I'm back into comp. See you later. How about you?
Yeah, I played it a few times. Definitely not as much as Junkenstein's. I played that so many times. But again, they were trying to do something here that's a little bit more PvP based instead of the PvE content, which is what everyone was requesting, which seems like an odd move, but at the same time, it also seems like a good idea based on the current event. It's like, well, if you want to do a Christmas event, what's the most natural thing for Christmas? Well, something to do with Santa Claus and, that, or you could do like gigantic snowball fight on a small map. That sounds fun too. So even though that's a lot of people were like, this isn't what we asked for, we wanted PvP or PvE content. It's like, well, there's only so much you can do with that. You have to be really creative. There's a fast turnaround time, all those things. But I think it's really fun at the end of the day. And it seems to me as if they've reversed a lot of their efforts outside of the content of the event and they've done more in the realm of like skins and like cool factors for that thing, because I feel like we have better and more things that you're actually able to garner from the event loot boxes.
There's a lot of things, and they definitely went all out. Like the maps that are Christmassy and stuff, King's Row and Hanamura look really cool. So they redid all that artwork. So that is pretty cool. I think that my main gripe with the main thing is just how much waiting you have to do. If they had just made it so that instead of when you get killed, you have to wait for everyone else, they had made it to like instant respawn, and basically each team is just trying to get as many points as they can. Like when the timer runs out, whoever has more points, then they win. I think that little fact would have made it so much more enjoyable, because then you don't have to sit and wait like 5 minutes every round if you get killed, but more of a, hey, let's go. And I think that's what Junkenstein's Revenge had, right? It was like full packed action for everyone from start to finish until until you lose or won the game. But with this one, I don't know. It's very paced, and just especially with the fire rates and stuff, is just everything is just too paced, and a little too slow for me. But I don't know. That is kind of my 2 cents on that. I do like a lot of the skins. I didn't think I was gonna like too many of the Christmassy stuff, because I'm generally just not a fan of Christmas skins. I think they look really weird when it's not Christmas. It just looks ridiculous. But things like the Yeti skin or the Farah or Reaper Frost skins, those actually look really cool.
Those are dope.
Yeah,
those are so dope.
Elf,
like freaking Mr.
Tracer,
Freeze version.
Yeah.
For Farah, and Reaper has a gigantic snowflake with like frostbite coming out of the Reaper mask. Like, that's really cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Not so much of a fan of the Christmassy ones like Elf Tracer and the Lucio one
Santa
are
Torb.
okay. Yeah, Santa Torb, they're okay. I mean, they're fun and lighthearted, but I don't think I would wear them.
The Roadhog one is just like borderline troll enough to be used year round. You know, with a candy cane hook to like tilt people.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Having the red belly button was a Rudolph's like beacon. It seems a little much.
I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there who are enjoying them. I'm just being a Grinch about the skins over here.
I love the Lucio one. I think the color is what sells it. Like for me, I don't even really care about the Christmas hat, but the ski mask is really cool and all that stuff. But that's pure cosmetics for you guys. If you guys want to see more of that stuff, some of the other cool things is there's a highlight intro for Symmetra with snowflakes that looks really cool. And then there's a Widowmaker emote or a highlight intro where she like fakes you out with getting mistletoe and then like slams you to the ground. That's pretty cool.
Oh,
and there's a legendary there's a legendary emote for Zarya where it's like her opening presents, and there's 3 different versions of it. And one of them is like a Russian nesting doll of her opening a bunch of presents, and like present within a present within a present within a present. So you might like that as well. There's also one other bonus thing that we got with the Christmas event, which I didn't actually see coming, but it's very Blizzard-like for them to basically drop the price of all of the Overwatch content that you can buy. Besides, like, or outside of Overwatch content. So that means you can buy the game of Overwatch instead of the normal $40 price tag. It's $29.99. Or Origins, instead of being the $59.99, it's now $39.99. So you got $20 off Origins. And then if you want to do the upgrade, so if you already own the copy of Overwatch and you just want to get Origins, the upgrade's only going to cost you about $9.99. So if you guys want to go ahead and do that and get those Origin skins that you may like, maybe you really like that Soldier 76 skin. I do. So I bought Origins, and you can still get it. So that's really cool.
Yeah, so that's really exciting. If you're trying to get your Smurf, now is the time.
Yeah, this is definitely the time for smurfing, if that's what you're going for in the game. And we have another brief announcement that I'll turn over to Andres about our Patreon patrons, our mods, and our admin in contributing to audio clips.
Yes, I wanted to remind everyone who is a patron to submit your recordings if you would like to be part of the audio collage that the Omnic Lab is creating by the end of the year. We have posted it on Discord, we have posted it on our Patreon page, and we announced it last episode, but I'm giving you guys another little reminder. We are hoping to get all of the submissions before the 24th. That way I have some time to go over them and edit them if needed to make a match, and then make a cool audio collage out of them, blend them all together, and make something cool. I'm really excited about this. We've started getting in some of the submissions, but we definitely could use a lot more. I know there's a lot of more of you out there, and it would be really cool to have you be a part of the show at the end of the year and make something really memorable for all of our community, everyone who listens, and have a cool end of year, Omnic Lab kind of celebration. So if you're interested in this, make sure you submit your audio recording. Make sure it's not too long, less than 2 minutes. 3 minutes is a little pushing it. We don't want to make the episode 4 hours long, but I am willing to work with you guys, especially because I can edit them and stuff. So hopefully we can make something cool, but send them in. The topic is pretty open. If you want to talk about what do you like about the Omnic Lab, what do you like to see next year, something about Rob or me. If you'd like to tell us who you are, or you would like to send a message to the Omnic Lab community, if you want to write a poem or rap or a song or whatever it is that you want to do, go ahead and do that. The only thing we're going to be a little picky about is if you start getting, political or religious and it starts getting too off topic, we're not trying to do like blatant self-promotion of stuff over here. But, as long as it's related to Overwatch and the Omnic Lab community, it's all good. Send it in.
Absolutely. So send them in, boys and girls, before Santa gets here, because the 24th, the doors are closed. So we can listen to your beautiful voices on Christmas morning. All right. Yeah. So let's jump into the battle for space. And please insert your Portal 2 references here. Space. All right. So we have this section dedicated towards you taking advantage of space and denying it from your opponents. It can sometimes be as effective as landing kills. It reduces the effectiveness of your enemy heroes, as well as gaining an unfair advantage that may not have been there that they had over you at that point. And there's also the concept that we might be touching on, kind of like not as a main topic, but as something within the mini topics, is something called trading spaces, which is not just like, hey, can I have that seat because I'm in the row and I want the window seat on the plane? It's not that idea of trading spaces, folks. But it should be something that the battle for space is one of the main driving forces of the game. And the battle for space, the most important thing about the battle for space at the top is kind of just an understood statement, is the battle of space revolves around the objective. So just keep that in mind, is the objective is always the central driving factor of where the battle of space is to be taking place. So, Andres, let's kick it off, man. Tell us what's up with the battle for space.
All right. Yes, like Rob said, today we're going to be talking about space. And when I mean space, what space are you occupying in the map? And how are you utilizing that space to move the objective forward or to get what you're trying to get? I think there's a really big emphasis in the game on landing kills, on focusing certain targets of, knowing that we have to push the payload or knowing that we have to get the objective. But I think there's not as much critical thinking in the how or why do these things. And I think that a lot of people just don't think about Overwatch in the concept of space and gaining ground and making the opponent lose ground so that you can forward your objective without putting yourself at a huge risk. Basically, if you are able to understand this concept of gaining ground for your team, and not only gaining any ground, but gaining key ground, key space that you can take to really put yourself at an advantage. And like Rob said, this can be sometimes as effective as just landing a kill by yourself. Just being able to take a very critical point can be equally as effective as just like taking a hero from the enemy team. And like you said, it's very effective at reducing the effectiveness of enemy heroes against you and taking away any unfair advantages that they might have over the point. Because especially as you're attacking the defending team is going to have a lot of advantages over you. Even though the concept of space doesn't only apply to the defending team, it applies to both. And it's kind of like a tug of war between both teams where they're both trying to contest for like these very specific things. So let's go into a few of the advantages that you can get from spaces in Overwatch. So you guys kind of have an idea what I'm talking about here. A few of the positional advantages that you can gain from Overwatch are, for example, high ground. High ground is a well-known positional advantage that gets preached all the time. Like, get to high ground. All the pro teams go to high ground and they utilize high ground. But I think that a lot of people don't understand why high ground is a good idea. They kind of just do it on autopilot. And the funniest thing that I see people do sometimes is they take the high ground, and as soon as the enemy team starts pushing the payload, they all jump on the payload, and it's like, well, what was the whole point of going to the high ground in the first place?
Why are we up here then?
You just literally missed the concept of high ground at that point. But why is high ground good? One, it reduces the hitbox size of your hero. If you're upstairs, mostly they can only see your shoulders, maybe head, but a lot of your body is concealed. So your hitbox effectively becomes a little smaller. You also counter many abilities in the game just by literally being upstairs. Like, a good example is Earth Shatter. Earth Shatter is one of the most broken abilities in this game and can turn the tide of battle in 1 second. But it turns out that if you're in high ground, you're usually pretty safe from it. And this comes into like many other abilities, especially ones that have a short range. If you're on high ground, you're automatically countering those abilities without doing anything else but just your position. It also reduces the ability to focus fire you. If you're in a good vantage point, a lot of heroes just plainly won't have range on you. And the ones who have range on you are going to have a hard time just dealing constant damage to you because, one, your model is really small. Two, if you really need to, you can literally just crouch or back up a little bit and you're completely out of line of sight at that point, which means if they actually get you halfway through your health or they get a few shots on you, you can just back up a little bit, let your healer throw a few heals on you, your Ana who's way in the back and throw a few heals on you, or you can just throw your bio grenade, heal a little bit, and then keep pressuring from your vantage point. Talking about vantage point, it also gives you a huge vantage point. Usually when you're on high ground, you have a big peripheral vision of everything, right? You can see your tanks, you can see your front line, then you can hopefully see the main choke point, and you can usually see like the right door or the left door that are next to the choke point, which are like the alternative routes, I guess. So it just gives you a good idea of where your team is, or where the enemy team is, or where the enemy team might be trying to flank you from, and not only that, but gives you time to react to that, right? If you're in the middle of the street, really close to the point, you might not be able to see the Genji that is going around you, or that maybe the enemy team decided to send 3 guys around the payload while 3 of them are on the payload. Well, if you maybe were in high ground, you might have been able to detect that flank a lot earlier and call it out to your team and readjust your position accordingly. And I think the last one that high ground really gives you an advantage of is it really frees you up to focus on key heroes, because you're in a position where it's really hard to pressure you, and you also don't have to worry about things like Reinhardt literally walking up to you and hitting you with a hammer, because that is just not possible from the position you're in. Then you get a lot more freedom to gauge who you need to focus, right? Like if the Ana is right behind the Reinhardt, you can actually shoot at her because the shield doesn't cover, vertically as much, and he has to be aiming it at the front. So now you can bypass the shield and actually shoot at the Ana from above. So it's just like a lot of advantages that gaining the right high ground. Like, not all high ground is good, obviously. If you're like way up in a building where you can't see anything, that's not very good. But I think that it's become common knowledge which are good high ground positions to be at. And these are some of the reasons of. Would you like to add anything to this?
Yeah, I think the other thing that I was wondering about for high ground is a lot of times you're actually going to see spaces. I'm thinking specifically on Nepal, where both teams run to the instead of running to the point where you go up the staircase to contest point. Before the point unlocks, both teams go right and left and contest the high ground to the left of the point. Or not on the tower one. This is the one where there's like I think it's called Village. It's where like that little hut is in the middle with the
Yeah,
bridge,
village in Nepal.
and you're contesting the high ground on the left side. So in essence, both of the high grounds, quote unquote, are actually equivalent. So you're basically fighting for the high ground. So it's basically a preemptive high ground positioning, putting both teams at even position.
That's a good example of high ground advantage. I think that in that
Yeah.
map, it has become pretty common knowledge in a village of Nepal that if you go up top first and you gain the high ground position first, you suddenly put yourself at an advantage over the enemy team. And whatever team can get that high ground and then kind of like move in accordingly usually has an advantage over the other team. And like this has been a pro strategy that's been going on for a while. And that is the reason why every team goes up there first, because they know that if they can get that high ground, they'll have an advantage over the enemy team. That doesn't mean that they're going to win the fight. It just means that they increase their chances.
Right.
But let's move on to some of the other positional advantages. The next one is really easy. This one is just outranging. Any position that allows you to outrange a lot of abilities while still being effective, and obviously this depends on the hero that you're playing, can be really good. A really good example of outranging to gain an advantage, you can see it with Pharah versus Junkrat, for example. Junkrat can kill Pharah for sure, but if Pharah is smart and just keeps her distance from Junkrat, he literally will never have enough range to kill her. Like literally, his abilities just will never reach Pharah. So he his capability of killing Pharah basically becomes zero as long as Pharah knows that positional advantage from Junkrat. Another way to outrange like this that is very common is, for example, Roadhog's hook. Roadhog's hook is one of the strongest abilities in the game to get picks and put your team at an advantage. But it turns out that if you stand far away enough, you neutralize that ability not by juking it or outplaying the Roadhog or doing some crazy Zarya shielding maneuvers, but simply by keeping your distance. Like the Roadhog's hook at that point becomes more ineffective just because of where you position yourself, and you don't give that advantage to him. Basically, I know sometimes this is easier said than done, especially since Roadhog's hook is like 200 meters and like its radius is about the size of the moon. But what can we do about that?
Yeah, you have a couple other things too. Like outranging positions isn't necessarily individual hero dependencies like Roadhog and Pharah, for example, but it is also outranging specific I guess maybe not, this doesn't really fall under outranging, but basically like playing around what it's actually there. So for example, when Symmetra does the projected barrier, or Winston has his bubble, or Reinhardt has his shield, you can play around the position of the heroes by having abilities that work around them. For example, fire striking Reinhardt through his shield, or using a Symmetra ball through any shields will work. And if you want to throw it in there, Sombra's hack can work through the shields. So you can use what the opponents are using as their strength in a scenario and use that against them. Same thing with Pharah. Like if your enemy team is using their defensive strategy as their position, like their main positioning tool is their Reinhardt shield, and that tool is moving the team as a unit. You can disrupt that by gaining a out of range position with Pharah and shooting in a dart or not a dart. I guess this would be the gosh, I can't remember the specific name of the skill, but it's basically a knockback, and you push out on the back wall, especially on a space in Nepal, when you're inside and you have that ground where you can knock them off of the map. It's really great. And even on Lijiang Tower, when you can knock people completely into the river. So you have tools that let you outrange, but you also have tools that let you work around what your current enemy position is. And that doesn't necessarily go into the other categories we're about to hit on here. But I was noticing that a lot this week when you can use Winston to play around shields, like you can just lightning through stuff. It's really, really strong if you know what you're doing and you're using it as a disruption tool for your enemy position to gain ground.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll go into that in a little bit. How to use all these advantages. Let's just finish really quick on the two other advantages that I want to talk about. And all these are, very obvious. If you've been playing Overwatch, you have heard of these strategies for a while. But I just want to go through them real quick before we go into the real meat of positioning and stuff. The last two are controlling a choke point. Very, very known. Basically, you cannot go into a competitive match without the defending team creating a choke point. At this point in time, defensive positions have become pretty standard in Overwatch, and all of them usually revolve around a choke point. If you go to Anubis, most people set up in the center platform and use the archway in the beginning as a hard choke point to stop the enemy team. If you go into Volskaya, most people are creating a choke point on that first hangar to not let the enemy team through. If you're playing Hanamura, they're blocking the choke point in the beginning of the those huge wooden entrances. But basically, if you just go through any map and think about the defensive position, those strategies have been developed already, and most teams already have this kind of second nature of hey, let's roll around this choke point.
This is where we're holding.
And hold over here. This even happens on attack. For example, when you're in the last point of Hanamura and you're able to wipe the defending team on that point, you immediately move up with your team to block those two little tiny exits so that the enemy team cannot just gush back into the point and keep stalling you. Yep. So choke points are very known and are very used and are a great positional advantage because, one, you can funnel a ton of damage into a very tiny space that guarantees almost spam damage to hit the enemy hero a lot, right? You can guarantee your damage to hit the enemy heroes a lot easier in such a confined space rather than trying to keep track of 6 heroes flying all over the place. You just know that they have to come through there, so it makes it really easy for you to predict and shoot at them. You also choke points are really high risk for the team who's trying to go through them, but very low risk for the team who's trying to defend them. Mainly because the team who's trying to defend the choke point usually has time to set up and establish a defensive perimeter. So you'll have Symmetra turrets or Torbjörn turret, or you'll have a Junkrat kind of holding the line down there and spamming and putting his grenades. You have your Reinhardt shield already in place and the heroes that need to be behind the shield ready to fire. And most importantly, the team who's defending it doesn't have to go through it. It's the other team who has to shoot and defend themselves as they go through this very dire situation. So choke points are an amazing positional advantage, both for attacking or defending. If you can make any team have to funnel through a choke point and your team is able to get advantage of it, you're usually putting yourself at an advantage. And then the last positional advantage I want to talk about is flanking. And not to say there's not many more positional advantages. Actually, there's a lot of nuances to all these that we already mentioned. But I think these are kind of the ones that come to mind to most people and the most used and the ones that are most intuitive. But the last one is flanking. Flanking can be an amazing positional advantage, and it gives you a couple of things. First, it gives you the element of surprise. Being able to fire at heroes before they see you is huge, right? You might be able to get a couple of shots off before they even turn around, which already puts you at an advantage over them. It also forces the enemies to turn around and stop paying attention to the thing that they want to pay attention to, aka the front line most of the time. If you're able to come out behind them, obviously a good player is going to turn around and deal with you immediately and not just ignore you. But because they're paying attention to you, that means that they're not paying attention to somebody else. So if you're able to flank, let's say, an Ana or a Mercy, suddenly you take out their ability to heal their Reinhardt or heal the Diva, literally because they can't, right? Like if they don't pay attention to you, they might die, or they're just giving you free stuff. So flanking can be really effective for those things. And the last thing is flanking allows you to do burst damage without kind of like being detected. Like for example, Genji is the master of doing this because you can do a lot of little burst combos with him that are super lethal, but are also hard to pull off if the enemy is kind of like looking at you. But if you're able to sneak behind a Widowmaker who's kind of like just aiming, and you can like align your cursor with her head, throw those 3 shurikens at her, get like 3 headshots, dash, and do your melee. Then suddenly she's dead in like 3 seconds, and you were able to do it because she never moved and she wasn't dodging you because she was just not expecting you. So great stuff you can do with flanking, and it can give you a huge positional advantage. Is there anything else you want to add to these last 2 before we move on to the next section?
I think flanking is something we're probably going to be expanding upon a lot in the further sections, like how much of a liability it is, how much of it is a high risk, high reward, and also how flanking has a completely different mentality when you run it on offense versus when you're running it on defense. And sometimes how your priorities might change when you flank and what you find on the other end, as it were, when you're behind enemy lines. So I'm excited to get into more of the detailed side of it, but I think you covered the basic base that we want to hit.
All right, sounds good. So, having talked about some of the positional advantages that you can find in the game, you might be asking yourself, well, Andres, I already know all of that. I know how to flank, and I know about high ground, and I also know that I can outrange Roadhog's hook and use all this stuff. So, why are you telling me all this stuff again? And the reason is because literally, this is how you should be guiding yourself in the game. And this is how every decision in the game should be made. You literally should be thinking about what is the positional advantage of the enemy team. Are they using a choke point? Are they using high ground over us? Are they flanking us and picking us apart from the back? All these things have to be a consideration literally from the start of the game. When you go out of the gates, if you're an attack or a defensive team, it doesn't matter. The first thing you need to do is, okay, what heroes do they have? And then immediately you need to ask yourself, where are they standing and how is their positioning detrimental to us? And how can we take advantage of that position and flip it around so that now we are the ones with the advantage and not them? This is super important because if you have this concept clear, sometimes you don't even have to get kills to advance your objective or do what you want to do. If you know, for example, a good example of this is in Dorado. When you're in attack in Dorado, it's very common that as soon as you push the payload past the first corner around that building, the whole entire team is on that balcony up top of that lounge. And they usually have a Reinhardt shield, and there's sometimes like a Torbjorn turret behind it, or a soldier, a McCree behind it, and they're all shooting at you from up top. It's a really safe position, right? Like as the attacking team, you don't have a lot of ways to shoot at them, especially if they're behind a Reinhardt shield, but they have a lot of ways to shoot at you when you're like in the middle of the uncovered street. So right from the get-go, you know, okay, that is the advantage of their team being up there and being able to shoot at us from up there. And then like usually the defensive strategy is, hey, we're gonna shoot at them from here. As soon as we get a pick on maybe their healer and stuff, then all of our tanks jump on the point, we rush him, we kill him, rinse and repeat. If we're not able, if we're not able to do this, then we fall back into the choke point past the bridge and we hold over there. But usually the beginning strategy is we're gonna start in the top of this lounge, try to get an advantage here, then wipe the team as we can.
Yep. Other examples would be top of the gas station on Route 66, or if you're playing Nimbani, you hold the top of the ramp, and then if you don't see them after a few seconds, you check the main choke or you check the back end. And then there are a few other things that you can do to disrupt. I know that during our game night, we had someone almost always switching to Diva or Pharah to knock people off of that high point on Dorado. And it was hilarious when someone literally just jumped out of the point, rocket jumped in the air, float above the point where you guys are sitting on Dorado, and then used the knockback and knocked 4 people off of the high ground, including the tank. And I was just losing it. It was really funny.
Well, I think I was the one who did that in the hangout. I did it with Diva. Yeah. And like the thing is, like, once you know these are like the standard positions, for example, because people do this all the time. So the only thing you need to know is, hey, we have to win that space. If we win that space, we probably win this section of the map. So what I usually do, for example, on Dorado, is with Diva, I'll just go below the basement to the left, and you come out into the back of that lounge area. And from there, you don't even have to go up the stairs. You literally just have to rocket boost up the wall and literally charge the Reinhardt from the back. And usually he's like on the very edge, holding his shield so that all his allies can shoot. So if you just like trample through there, you probably knock him out and knock like maybe another person and disrupt that whole thing. Suddenly their Reinhardt is in front of your enemy team, and he was not expecting it, and everyone's kind of panicking a little bit from the enemy team, like, oh, whoa, we lost our position. Everyone's kind of scrambling, and your team has a huge opportunity then to move in because they're not protected anymore. Their Reinhardt is super vulnerable. Exactly. So it's just that, like,
so let's break that down. Let's sort of run the rabbit trail a little bit more of a Q&A style. So like, Andres, we disrupted the high ground by using an outranging position because Diva has the ability to fly down and up and move around. And you can control the one choke point on the map that is there because the high ground allows them the position of seeing all of the choke points where you can come out on offense. And you've split the enemy team to actually have to hold 2 spaces at half strength, aka 3v3, or 3 of their team on one spot and 3 of the other team on the other spot, and have them make the decision. Do all 6 jump down? Do we split our efforts, etc.? And then you did all of this by utilizing the flank, right?
Yeah, and you did it with a flank. Yeah, exactly. So basically, you neutered the enemy team strategy simply by disrupting their position. You didn't have to get a kill. You didn't have to do an ultimate conglomerate and like wipe the entire team. Like literally the only thing you did was disrupt their position, and that is enough to win you that first stage in the Dorado fight, right? Like at that point, they all have to back up if they know what they're doing and kind of like regroup. And then your team has a ton of time to keep pushing that payload, no problem. And now let's keep with Dorado, because Dorado is actually a really good map to give examples about this. Let's say that you were able to win your first choke point in the attack of Dorado because you were able to disrupt their positioning, and then not only that, once you were able to disrupt their positioning in the beginning and you wiped them for the first time, you were actually preemptive and you moved up into the little door choke points that are right before point A, and you blocked those so that the enemy team could not come in and your team was able to cap the map. Now you're in second point of Dorado, that long road with a huge balcony upstairs, like with the churches.
By the church.
Yeah, in the middle. Yeah. That is another key point in Dorado. A lot of teams love going up into that huge passageway up top next to the church and just staying up there. That is the high ground position of that map. And that position is actually really good. It gives you full vision of the entire street. It gives you vision of all of the entrances where the enemy team might be coming from. And on top of that, it puts you in a position that is really hard to shoot at, right? Like Ana soldiers and stuff are going to have a really hard time shooting at you there. More importantly, the enemy Reinhardt has no business with the people who are up there. Like literally, Reinhardt is completely outclassed by any hero that sits up there. And that is like the preferred spot for people like Soldier, Zenyatta, Ana. You know, anyone who has a long range and doesn't necessarily want to be in the middle of the frame. Yeah, Widow is amazing in that point because you have a huge vantage point from there. So these are the heroes who love hanging out up there. And like if the enemy team or the defending team The only thing they have to do is position their Ana, Zen, and Soldier up there, and then maybe they leave their Roadhog and Reinhardt down on the point, or their Reinhardt and Diva down contesting the payload. Suddenly, their Reinhardt becomes really strong, right? Because he has a Zen upstairs who can orb him, and an Ana who can nade him and keep healing him. And basically, nobody can hurt the Zen and the Ana. Zen and Ana are in a great position because they can't get rushed. They're really hard to focus. If maybe like a lonely Genji goes up there, there's still three of them up there, so they can easily take care of the Genji, right? Like the Soldier just focus them, they put this corner orb on him and nade him, and he's dead in 2 seconds. So it's a really strong position where they can take care of their tanks, they can take care of themselves. And usually, as a team, to be able to break this positioning, it requires you being able to understand, hey, having those 3 guys up there is too strong, and we will be at a huge disadvantage on the fight as long as they are up there. That doesn't mean that you can't win the fight. I mean, you can always outplay your opponent and still kill him, but if the opponent is about the equal level as you are, your percentage of winning that fight is just slightly reduced. You know what I mean? Your chances are just lower based on positioning. So what you can do a lot of the times is your DPS players, maybe both of your DPS players, hopefully they can be playing something that is very mobile, like Genji or even Soldier that can just sprint. You're both DPS players, and maybe your off tank can be like, guys, we know that they're up there, and there's no way that we're gonna win this fight if we just kind of like all stay on the payload and let them shoot at us from the high ground. So the 3 of you can be like, let's go upstairs. There's a flank upstairs that you can use in Dorado. If you don't know him, I recommend looking at the maps. But you can go behind the church, through the church, and then suddenly you are in the high ground with them. And then if you go with your Diva or your Roadhog, then you have somebody that can actually provide cover fire for you. And here's the beauty of it. You don't even have to kill them. You don't even have to land a single kill. The only thing you have to do is walk in with your Diva or Roadhog, guns blazing, scare the snot out of them, and hopefully make them just jump into the safety or their tank, or literally just back up and be like, okay, we cannot be here. Once you've done this, suddenly now you have both of your DPS players up there and you're off tank, and you have flipped the tables on them. Now they're not the ones who have the high ground. Now you're the one who has the high ground. Now you're the one who can shoot at their Reinhardt. You can shoot at anyone who is down below and provide cover fire for your own Reinhardt and supports, which are carrying the payload at that point. Your off tank at this point might make a judgment call and be like, hey, I can drop down and help push the payload and support frontline, or I can stay up here with my DPS and make sure that they don't get bullied down, and that we can keep this advantageous position until we can get it around this corner, and now it doesn't become as much of a problem. Does this make sense?
It makes sense to me. I'm trying to figure out what... Like, we're really using a lot of specific scenarios on a specific map, like Dorado, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping that a lot of this can translate to you guys that are listening, because that's my biggest worry with this topic, is that it seems a bit specific. So if you guys have more questions, please feel free to jump on our Discord. I know it's kind of self-promo-y, but we really want to hear your input, and it seems like that's the best way to interact with you on like a more give and take thing instead of just like touch and base over email. You guys can email us and ask questions. Maybe we can put them in the show in a full sense. But if you were looking for something more immediate or something that we can discuss here, please go over to our Discord, discord.me/OmnicLab, and let us know. We're kind of trying this out. We are doing our absolute best to give you a show that is not something that's carbon copied from the front page of Reddit. We're also trying not to give you the same thing that you're hearing over and over again from YouTubers, and they're like, hey, this is a really big contention point in the meta, let's talk about that. Like, we're trying to help you guys get better at anything and everything that is in Overwatch, and this is a really huge part, but it's very difficult in the sense of non-video related content to help you on the go kind of learn and adjust. So let's actually back up to more of the basics of what we were discussing in the specifics, okay? We had flanking, controlling the choke, and outranging positions, as well as positioning on a high ground. So most of these things are positioning in relationship to where the objective is on a payload map, getting to the high ground in relationship to where the payload is coming through, utilizing that high ground. And then the enemy team, aka the attacking team most of the time, is then responsible for outranging the high ground or controlling the choke point by flanking the high ground if they don't have it. So you're basically giving up the objective, sacrificing your time on the objective to get to the high ground to push the enemies off of it and or take advantage of it yourself, and then retreating back to the payload or whatever the objective is in order to hold it. I hope that makes sense in a general sense. Like, Andres, am I spitting crazy here? Like, that's kind of the gist of non-payload oriented maps, or just trying to like giving you the big broad brush strokes of what you were saying instead of a specific side. We want to give you both, like specific and general.
Yeah. Well, okay, so let's summarize over here, because you're right. I have talked
Okay.
a lot about like very specific examples, and it's hard to talk about this without giving specific examples.
Of course.
But basically, all of that we talk about, high ground, outranging, controlling choke point, flanking, all that stuff is just ways for you to find the advantage. And like, this stuff takes time. It also requires you to know your hero, know the advantages of your hero, know the strengths, know the range of your hero, know what ideally you should be standing to do to get the most out of your hero. And as you start getting these, like, it starts making more sense, like when you should flank, when you should try to hold a choke point. Like, for example, McCree is pretty terrible at holding a choke point just by himself, right? Like, he's easily killable and he can get rushed. That D.Va can just like stand in front of him and literally kill him. But maybe like Symmetra can be great at holding a choke point by herself, because, you know, she has 6 turrets that help her and huge giant orbs that cover like an entire doorway with stuff like that. Likewise with if you're flanking, like maybe flanking with Reinhardt is not the best idea, but flanking with Genji is great, because you can get anywhere really fast and in any verticality, like no problem. But basically, as a player and as a team, your attention should always be focused on the positional advantage and how can you take it away from the enemy team? How can you get the team to stop being where they're at, where they're like really comfortable and safe, and put them in a position where they're not safe anymore, and maybe you have more of an advantage. And I think I wrote down here like little steps. These are very obvious, but basically when you go out of the gates, what always should be going through your head is locate the enemy and their heroes. Where are they standing? Is the soldier alone in a corner that your team can rush him? Are they all in the high ground, all 6 of them together in a death ball, getting ready for you to try to come up there? Are they all in the street, just hanging around and, you know, in the middle of the point? That's the first question you need to ask yourself. Then decide who's best suited in your team to deal with those heroes, right? Let's say if they do actually have a McCree or a soldier that's kind of like alone in a corner, and turns out you have a Genji and a Winston, well, that's like the perfect combination right there. Both heroes that can get really fast to where he is and eliminate him really fast, and then kind of like regroup with your team. Or maybe they have just a lonely soldier up top and the rest of the heroes are battling you down at the bottom in the middle of the street. And turns out you have a D.Va. It's really easy to tell your D.Va, hey D.Va, just fly up there and harass the soldier. And now you have a lot of space to move in without the soldier firing at you, because D.Va is, you know, pressuring him and dealing with that. So always decide who's the best hero to deal with each situation, and then find a plan of action, right? Like we said, if you're trying to take in the second point of Dorado, if you're trying to take the top point and they have 3 people up there, maybe the best plan of action is not just to send your Genji alone and for him to get torn apart up there. But the best plan of action might be, hey, actually, Genji, go up there, but take your Roadhog and take Diva as well. All three of you go up there and take care of that space. And then execute. You know what I mean? Once you have the plan of action, go do it. And go through this cycle many times. Locate the enemy heroes and their position. Decide who's the best hero in your team to deal with them. Find a plan of action that makes sense. Like, are you going to take a flanking route? Are you just going to use your Pharah concussive blast to knock him out of there? Like, that can be a plan of action. You know what I mean? And then execute it. Don't just say it and then ignore it for like an entire minute of the match. Once you know what's the problem and once you have a plan to get rid of it, make sure you go do it right away. Time is ticking in Overwatch. And this is always ongoing for the entire game, both in attack and defense. Last thing before we close out this. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just no. You were gonna take it. Go for it.
I was gonna say the last thing I was gonna say about space contesting is that there are heroes who are definitely better at contesting space than others, and I'm gonna give you my all-star space contesters. And I know that this might spur up some discussion and some people might not agree with this, but I truly believe these guys are really great at contesting space, and I'll give my reasons. And those are Diva, Winston, and Genji. I'm very tempted to put Reinhardt in here too, because he literally is the space contester of the game. But the reason why I'm not putting it in my top 3 is because Diva, Winston, and Genji have something that Reinhardt doesn't have. And it's the ability to go anywhere in the map pretty much instantly without having to wait. You just get there in a matter of seconds.
Yeah.
Well, Reinhardt is slow and clunky, and it takes him a long time to get to places, especially high ground. Like, it's really hard to get a Reinhardt on high ground and really slow. Well, Diva and Winston don't have that problem. Same with Genji. And I would say that out of the 3, right now, Diva is the space contesting hero. And I think that is why she's so strong right now in the meta. Like, her immense health pool, defense matrix for ages, and then the ability for her to actually deal a very decent amount of damage makes her like one of the strongest heroes to just contest space. Not to mention, she actually has a knockback too. So she has a movement in disruption ability, if you want to call it that, where she can boop people off, and you can use that to your advantage to, force people out of the ground, or just like stand in their face and literally bully them out of that space, and being able to get there almost instant speed or anywhere in the map is really, really strong to make this happen. Likewise with Winston and Genji, they have that ability to get anywhere and put a lot of pressure on heroes that are trying to be in a certain space. So I really like him because of this reason. Not to mention, I mean, any hero can contest for space, but I just think that these shine in almost any situation to do that.
I would just add an honorable mention. Honestly, you said Reinhardt, but I was surprised that you didn't say Lucio. I feel like Lucio is the all-time space gaining ground member, if you would, because Lucio's speed boost allows not only himself to take advantage of key situations, but allowing his team that may not have that mobility, like Ana and like Zen and Reinhardt, to basically gain ground and take advantage of a pick or take advantage of a spacing technique by just giving them a little bit of speed. And he also has a shotgun blast that can destroy people that are out of position at a moment's notice if he's nearby.
Lucio can be good at that.
Really
And
good.
I agree. The speed boost can be such a great tool to contest space because it allows you to move really quickly to where you want to move, which when you're trying to contest space, that's kind of like a major thing. But
It's the priority.
I would actually be curious if anyone who's listening to this, what are your top contesting heroes? I know that Diva, Winston, and Genji are my favorite, and I just maybe because of the way I use them. But who do you use to contest space? Do you even contest space? Do you think about this while you're playing your games? Is this like a major source of concern? Because I think a lot of people focus on, the immediate things like trying to get a kill, or we have to focus Diana. But a lot of the time, they don't really focus on like, hey, the position that they have right now is really good, but is really bad for us. Is there a way that we can maybe force them to move out of there, so that we don't have such a hard time? I feel like this question is not asked as much in our Overwatch games, and that's why I wanted to talk about it today. Hopefully, I didn't ramble on too much. It's a very large topic, and there's many examples that you can use. So hopefully, I made sense, and this discussion makes sense to you.
Another thing that maybe we have a brief just tool to talk about is just simple removal tools. Like we talked a lot about Diva Boop and Concussive Blast from Pharah, and even Lucio Boop, as it were, like with the Shotgun Blast. But I'm even thinking of just like denial tools. We don't talk much about Junkrat because Junkrat isn't played a whole lot in the pro scene and he gets a lot of hate. But you have all kinds of tools at our disposal, right? We have Graviton Surge for Zarya. We have basically moving into a space over the course of the 2 seconds, having a bubble on Zarya and a bubble on an ally. You even have Hanzo's ultimate. It was like shooting a dragon into an area and forcing the enemy out of that. And if you use that as a funnel, you basically have created a choke point over the course of a short amount of time that you're forcing enemies into, and you can actually take advantage of that. And the other thing is just simply sleep darting something in the middle of a fight at the back line. You can win a backline battle at long range with Ana just by simply making the fight a 5v6 without actually killing something. Like there's all kinds of crazy things that you can do on characters in order to push a space or push a space by removing something. And I think eventually, this is a little bit of foreshadowing. Maybe we'll hit it on this, Andres, but I kind of